The Christmas gift that sent my sister-in-law to prison. A story of strategic revenge. My name is Victoria Chen, and I'm 32 years old. For the past 8 years, I thought I was living the American dream in Seattle, Washington. I'm the founder and CEO of Digital Spark Solutions, a social media marketing agency that I built from my studio apartment into a thriving company with 18 employees, an annual revenue of $3.2 million. My husband, Ryan Mitchell, seemed like the perfect partner. At 35, he was a successful commercial real estate broker, specializing in luxury properties throughout the Pacific Northwest. With his athletic build, piercing blue eyes, and that charming smile that could close any deal, Ryan was everything I thought I wanted in a life partner. We met at a networking event in downtown Seattle back in 2016. I was wearing my lucky red dress, the one that always made me feel confident during important business meetings. Ryan approached me during the cocktail hour, and within minutes, we were deep in conversation about market trends and investment opportunities. He was intelligent, ambitious, and shared my drive for success. Our courtship felt like something out of a romantic movie. Weekend trips to the San Juan Islands dinner, dates at the city's most exclusive restaurants, and long walks through Pike Place Market, where Ryan would buy me fresh flowers from the vendors who knew him by name. When he proposed at Cary Park with the Seattle skyline twinkling behind us, I thought I was the luckiest woman alive. The engagement ring was a stunning 2.5-carat princess-cut diamond that caught the light beautifully. Our wedding at the Fairmont Olympic Hotel was featured in Seattle Bride magazine. We honeymooned in Tuscany, staying in a villa that Ryan had somehow managed to book despite a 2-year waiting list. Our life together looked perfect from the outside. We purchased a stunning modern home in the Magnolia neighborhood with panoramic views of Puget Sound. I was featured on the cover of Seattle Business Monthly as one of the city's top 30 under 30 entrepreneurs. Ryan's real estate portfolio was expanding rapidly, and he was being courted by several major firms. But perfection, I've learned, is often just an elaborate facade, hiding something rotten underneath. The first crack in our perfect life came in the form of Ryan's younger sister, Natasha Mitchell. Natasha was 28 years old and everything I couldn't stand about entitled people who had never worked a real day in their lives. She called herself a wellness influencer and lifestyle coach. But what she really was a professional manipulator living off her parents' trust fund and whatever money she could extract from Ryan. With her platinum blonde hair, designer clothes, and Instagram account boasting 95,000 followers, Natasha presented herself as some sort of guru for women seeking authentic living. Her posts were filled with inspirational quotes overlaid on pictures of her doing yoga poses in exotic locations, sipping green smoothies in her luxury apartment, or posing with expensive handbags that she claimed were investments in self-love. The reality was far different. Natasha had never held a real job, never paid her own rent, and had been kicked out of 3 different colleges for academic failure and behavioral issues. Her parents, wealthy tech executives who felt guilty about their demanding careers, had been enabling her lifestyle for years. From the moment Ryan and I got engaged, Natasha made it clear that she disapproved of me. During our engagement party, she cornered me in the bathroom and said, "I hope you realize that Ryan has very specific needs. He's used to a certain type of woman, and I'm not sure you understand his world." "What type of woman would that be?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Someone more sophisticated, someone who comes from the right background." Her smile was pure poison. "But I'm sure you'll figure it out." The fact that I had built a multi-million-dollar company from scratch apparently meant nothing to her. In Natasha's twisted worldview, success meant being born into the right family, not creating your own opportunities through hard work and determination. What made Natasha's behavior even more disturbing was her relationship with Ryan. It went far beyond normal sibling affection. She would show up at our house unannounced, letting herself in with the spare key Ryan had given her for emergencies. She'd interrupt our date nights with urgent phone calls that somehow always required Ryan's immediate attention. During family gatherings, Natasha would position herself next to Ryan, touching his arm constantly while speaking, laughing too loudly at his jokes, and shooting possessive glances at me whenever I tried to join their conversations. When I mentioned this behavior to Ryan, he always defended her. "She's just protective of me, Vic. She's been through a lot, and I'm the only stable person in her life." "What has she been through exactly?" I asked. Living rent-free in a luxury apartment while her parents pay all her bills? You don't understand her struggles. Not everyone is as naturally driven as you are. But I was beginning to understand something else entirely. The way Natasha looked at Ryan wasn't sisterly concern. It was possessive, territorial, and deeply inappropriate. The way she touched him, the intimate jokes they shared, the way she seemed to view me as competition rather than family. I pushed these disturbing thoughts away because they were too horrible to consider. But looking back now, all the warning signs were there. I just didn't want to see them. About 7 months before the Christmas disaster that would change everything, Ryan's behavior began to shift in subtle but unmistakable ways. At first, I attributed the changes to work stress. The commercial real estate market in Seattle was becoming increasingly competitive, and Ryan had mentioned several times that he was pursuing some major deals that could significantly boost his income. He started working later hours, claiming he needed to meet with investors and potential clients during evening hours when they were available. His phone, which had always been casually accessible, suddenly became a source of secrecy. He'd take calls in another room, speaking in hushed tones, and would quickly close his laptop whenever I entered his home office. New client confidentiality requirements, he explained when I asked about his increased privacy. Some of these investors are extremely particular about information security. The financial irregularities started small. Unexplained charges on our joint credit card, expensive dinners at restaurants I'd never been to, hotel charges in the city when Ryan claimed to be working from home, cash advances that didn't align with any expenses I could identify. When I suggested we sit down together to review our finances, something we'd always done as equal partners in our marriage, Ryan became defensive in a way I'd never seen before. "Don't you trust me?" he snapped. "I've been managing real estate investments for over a decade, Victoria. I think I know what I'm doing. This isn't about trust, Ryan. It's about partnership. We've always made financial decisions together. Well, maybe it's time we each handled our own areas of expertise. You focus on your marketing business, and I'll handle the real estate investments." That conversation sent chills down my spine. In a healthy marriage, financial transparency isn't a trust issue. It's basic respect and partnership. When your spouse starts hiding money, they're usually hiding something much more significant. But the most alarming change was in Ryan's relationship with Natasha. Their already inappropriate closeness intensified into something that made my skin crawl. They'd have whispered conversations that would stop abruptly when I entered a room. They shared private jokes that excluded me entirely. Natasha's social media posts began featuring more photos of her and Ryan together. At restaurants, at events, even casual shots of them laughing together that felt more like couple photos than sibling pictures. One evening in late October, I came home early from a client meeting to find Ryan and Natasha in our living room, sitting closer together on the couch than siblings should. They were looking at something on Ryan's laptop, their heads nearly touching Natasha's hand, resting on his thigh. When they noticed me, they jumped apart like teenagers caught by their parents. "Oh, Victoria," Natasha said, with that fake brightness she always used around me. "Ryan was just showing me some properties he's considering for investment." "Investment properties that require such intimate consultation?" I asked. Ryan cleared his throat awkwardly. "Natasha has been thinking about getting into real estate investing. I was just explaining some of the basics." But their body language told a completely different story. The guilt written across their faces, the way they couldn't maintain eye contact with me, the defensive posture they both adopted. Everything screamed deception. That night, lying in bed next to my husband, I made a decision that would ultimately save my life and my financial future. Instead of confronting them emotionally, I decided to investigate professionally. My background in business had taught me that data doesn't lie even when people do. In marketing, we analyze metrics to understand customer behavior and identify trends. I decided to apply the same analytical approach to my marriage. I started with our financial records, methodically reviewing bank statements, credit card bills, and investment accounts. What I discovered made my blood run cold. Over the past 8 months, there had been systematic transfers of substantial amounts from our joint accounts. $12,000 here, $28,000 there, sometimes as much as $45,000 in a single transaction. Always round numbers, always on days when Ryan claimed to be meeting with high-profile investors. The receiving account belonged to a limited liability company called Pacific Northwest Holdings, A quick search of public records revealed that this company had been registered 6 months earlier with 2 listed owners, Ryan Mitchell and Natasha Mitchell. My husband and his sister had created a shell company and were systematically draining our marital assets without my knowledge or consent. They weren't just having an inappropriate relationship. They were stealing from me to fund whatever sick fantasy they were living. I needed professional help, so I contacted James Rodriguez, a private investigator who specialized in financial fraud and marital misconduct cases. James was a former Seattle police detective with an impeccable reputation and a track record of handling sensitive cases with discretion. "This looks like classic asset stripping," James told me after reviewing the financial evidence I'd gathered. "Someone is preparing to disappear with a substantial amount of money. The question is whether they're planning to leave together or if one is planning to leave the other holding the bag." James's surveillance work over the next month revealed the truth I'd been dreading. Ryan and Natasha weren't just business partners in their theft. They were meeting regularly at upscale hotels throughout Seattle, checking in together, staying in single rooms, and behaving like lovers rather than siblings. "I have photographic and video evidence of intimate behavior," James reported during one of our clandestine meetings at a coffee shop in Capitol Hill. "Hotel staff at 3 different locations have confirmed they're regular customers, always booking rooms together, always requesting privacy services." The total amount they'd stolen was staggering $420,000 over 8 months. Money I'd earned building my agency money. Ryan had earned from legitimate real estate deals. Money we'd saved for our future home renovations, travel plans, and retirement investments. But the theft was just the tip of the iceberg. James discovered that Ryan and Natasha had been planning an elaborate escape to Vancouver, Canada, where they'd purchased a luxury condominium using funds from Pacific Northwest Holdings. They had new Canadian bank accounts, had been researching immigration procedures, and had even consulted with attorneys about establishing permanent residency. My husband was having an incestuous affair with his sister. They'd stolen nearly $500,000 from our marriage. And they were planning to flee the country together without even bothering to file for divorce. The betrayal was so complete, so calculated, that I actually felt impressed by their audacity. But that admiration quickly transformed into cold, strategic fury. Instead of confronting Ryan and Natasha immediately, I chose the strategic approach that had served me well in business. Emotional reactions rarely produce optimal outcomes. I needed to gather comprehensive evidence, consult with legal experts, and prepare an overwhelming case that would ensure justice. I retained Sarah Kim, one of Seattle's most ruthless divorce attorneys. Sarah was a former federal prosecutor who specialized in high-asset divorces involving fraud, deception, and criminal activity. Her reputation for destroying cheating spouses was legendary in legal circles. "This case goes far beyond a simple divorce," Sarah explained after reviewing James's evidence. "Your husband has committed multiple felonies, wire fraud, identity theft, conspiracy to commit financial crimes, and potentially tax evasion. His sister is equally culpable as a co-conspirator." "What are my legal options?" I asked. "We can pursue both civil and criminal remedies. Civil lawsuit for recovery of stolen funds, plus punitive damages. Criminal referral to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. They take cross-border money laundering very seriously, especially when it involves systematic theft and planned flight to avoid prosecution." "How much time do we have?" "Based on the evidence, they're planning to execute their escape soon. Probably after the holidays, when business activity slows down and international travel appears less suspicious." Sarah began filing preliminary paperwork while maintaining absolute secrecy. Asset freezes on Pacific Northwest Holdings, restraining orders on all joint accounts, and criminal complaints with federal authorities. Meanwhile, I played the role of the perfect, unsuspecting wife. I attended family gatherings, discussed holiday plans, and maintained normal routines while building an ironclad case against my husband and his incestuous partner. "We need them to incriminate themselves publicly," Sarah advised. "A recorded confession or documented admission of guilt would strengthen both the civil and criminal cases significantly." That's when I conceived the Christmas dinner plan. If Ryan and Natasha wanted to humiliate me with surprise divorce papers, which James had overheard them discussing during one of his surveillance sessions, I would give them a Christmas gift they'd never forget. But first, I needed one more piece of evidence to make their destruction complete. During James's surveillance, He'd noticed that Natasha had been making frequent visits to a medical clinic in Bellevue. She'd also been posting less frequently on social media and had canceled several public appearances, claiming she was dealing with health issues. "I think she might be pregnant," James told me during one of our meetings. The timing would align with when their hotel visits became more frequent. The possibility hadn't occurred to me, but it made perfect sense. If Natasha was carrying Ryan's child, it would explain their increased urgency about leaving the country and starting their new life together. "Can we confirm this?" I asked. "Not directly, but I have a contact at the clinic. If she's been receiving prenatal care, there might be a way to verify it." 2 weeks later, James provided confirmation. Natasha was indeed pregnant, approximately 4 months along, which aligned perfectly with the timeline of their affair. This revelation added another layer of criminal liability to their case. Not only were they committing financial fraud and planning to flee the country, but they were also engaged in an incestuous relationship that had produced a pregnancy. "This changes everything," Sarah told me when I shared the news. Incest is a felony in Washington state. The pregnancy provides physical evidence of their criminal relationship. Combined with the financial crimes, they're looking at potentially decades in prison. "What about the child?" I asked. "If they're both convicted, the child will likely be placed with other family members or in the foster care system. Given the circumstances of conception, it's probably for the best." I felt a moment of sadness for the innocent child who would be born into such a twisted situation. But my sympathy was quickly overwhelmed by anger at Ryan and Natasha for creating this mess in the first place. Christmas was 3 weeks away. According to James's intelligence, Ryan and Natasha were planning to present me with divorce papers during Christmas dinner at his parents' house, humiliate me in front of the entire family, and then disappear to Canada with their stolen money while I dealt with the shock and embarrassment. They had no idea that I'd been preparing my own surprise for months. Christmas Day at the Mitchell family home in Bellevue was supposed to be a traditional celebration. Ryan's parents, Margaret and Robert Mitchell, had invited the extended family, grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins, for their annual holiday gathering. The Mitchell family home was a sprawling Tudor-style mansion with perfectly manicured grounds and interior decorating that looked like it belonged in Architectural Digest. Margaret had spent weeks preparing for the celebration, hiring caterers and decorators to ensure everything was flawless. Ryan had been nervous and distracted all week, claiming he had a special surprise planned for Christmas Day. Natasha had been practically glowing with excitement, constantly checking her phone and exchanging meaningful glances with Ryan when they thought no one was watching. During Christmas dinner, the atmosphere felt charged with unspoken tension. Ryan barely touched his food, sweat beading on his forehead despite the perfectly controlled climate in the dining room. Natasha kept stealing glances at me, a barely contained smirk playing at the corners of her mouth. I knew exactly what was coming. James had overheard them rehearsing their plan during one of his surveillance sessions. They intended to present me with divorce papers in front of the entire family, publicly humiliate me, and then announce their plans to start a new life together. The shock and embarrassment were supposed to paralyze me long enough for them to execute their escape to Canada. After dinner, we gathered in the living room for the traditional gift exchange. It was a Mitchell family custom where everyone opened presents while the others watched and took photos. Usually a warm, loving ceremony filled with laughter and genuine affection. This year, it felt predatory. "Victoria," Natasha announced, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "I have a very special gift for you this year. Something I think will really change your life." She handed me an elegantly wrapped box with an elaborate gold bow. The size and weight suggested jewelry or some other small luxury item. The family watched expectantly, cameras ready to capture my surprise and delight. I opened the box slowly, maintaining my calm demeanor despite my racing heart. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was a stack of legal documents. Divorce papers already signed by Ryan, along with a handwritten note that read, "Time for you to find someone in your own league." "Cool, ta, part, avoir." "Surprise," Natasha said, unable to contain her glee any longer. "Ryan belongs with me now. We're going to be so much happier without you dragging him down." The room went dead silent. Ryan sat frozen, unable to meet anyone's eyes. His parents looked confused, then horrified as the implications began to sink in. "How interesting," I said, calmly setting the papers aside. Because I have a gift for you too, Natasha. Actually, I have several gifts. I reached into my designer handbag and extracted the first of 3 manila envelopes I'd carefully prepared. Each envelope had been hand-delivered by Sarah's office that morning, containing comprehensive legal documentation of Ryan and Natasha's crimes. Open it, I suggested with a sweet smile that didn't reach my eyes. Natasha's confidence began to falter. Something in my tone warned her that this wasn't going according to their carefully planned script. She accepted the envelope with trembling hands. She opened it to reveal the first page, a federal criminal complaint filed with the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. Charges included conspiracy to commit wire fraud money, laundering identity theft, and tax evasion. Natasha's scream pierced the Christmas morning silence. The papers scattered to the floor as she stumbled backward, her face white with terror. "What did you do?" Ryan demanded, lunging forward to grab the documents. "Keep reading," I suggested pleasantly. "It gets much more interesting." The subsequent pages detailed their systematic theft. $428,000 moved through Pacific Northwest Holdings, evidence of their joint hotel stays. The Vancouver condominium purchase bank records, surveillance photographs, and video footage of their intimate encounters. Robert Mitchell grabbed the papers, reading with growing horror and disgust. "Jesus Christ," he whispered. "Ryan, what have you done? What have both of you done?" "But wait," I announced, channeling the enthusiasm of a game show host. "There's more." I pulled out the second envelope. Natasha whimpered, backing away as if I were approaching with a weapon. "Paternity test authorization and medical records," I explained conversationally. "You see, when my private investigator discovered that you two were playing house, I became curious about the timeline of your relationship, especially when I noticed Natasha's recent wellness retreat absences and mysterious medical appointments." The room went silent except for Natasha's ragged breathing and Margaret Mitchell's quiet sobs. "Congratulations, Ryan. You're going to be a father and an uncle simultaneously." Natasha collapsed into a chair, sobbing hysterically. Ryan turned green, looking like he might vomit on his mother's Persian rug. "This is impossible," Margaret whispered. "This can't be real?" "Oh, but it is real," I continued, pulling out the third and final envelope. "And this one's my personal favorite." The third envelope contained civil lawsuit documentation, a $2.8 million demand for stolen funds, business damages, emotional distress, punitive damages, and attorney fees. "You see, while you two were busy playing forbidden lovers and stealing my money, I was building a comprehensive legal case. The FBI is very interested in your Vancouver venture. Turns out moving large amounts of money across international borders without proper documentation raises all sorts of red flags with federal authorities." Ryan's father looked ready to disown them both. His mother was crying openly, realizing that her children's crimes would destroy the family reputation she'd spent decades building. "The criminal charges carry potential sentences of 15-20 years in federal prison," I continued matter-of-factly. "The civil case will recover the stolen funds plus substantial additional damages. Oh, and I've documented everything for the IRS. Apparently you forgot to report income on several of your transactions." Natasha's sobs became hysterical. "You can't do this. We love each other. You don't understand what real love looks like." "Love?" I laughed genuinely for the first time in months. "You mean incest, because that's what this is legally and morally. And now you're bringing an innocent child into your sick fantasy." Ryan finally found his voice. "Victoria, please. We can work this out. We can make this right." "Work it out." I stood up, smoothing my dress and grabbing my coat. "Ryan, you stole nearly $500,000 from our marriage to fund an affair with your sister. You were planning to flee to Canada without even bothering to file for divorce. What exactly would we work out?" I never meant for it to happen this way." "Oh, but it did happen this way, and now you'll both face the consequences." That's when the sirens became audible in the distance, growing steadily closer. "I called the FBI this morning," I explained to the horrified family. "Told them you'd both be here surrounded by family with nowhere to run. They appreciate cooperation in federal cases." Blue and red lights began flashing through the windows. "Merry Christmas, everyone," I said, walking toward the door. "I'll be spending the rest of mine in the federal prosecutor's office, making sure these two get everything they deserve." Federal agents arrived with arrest warrants for both Ryan and Natasha. The charges were extensive conspiracy to commit wire fraud, money laundering, federal tax evasion, and crossing state lines to avoid prosecution. Ryan tried to run, making it through the kitchen and out the back door before being tackled by agents on the snow-covered lawn. Natasha offered no resistance, sitting in her chair sobbing as they placed handcuffs on her wrists. "This is all your fault," she screamed at me as they led her toward the federal vehicle. "You drove him to this. You were never good enough for him." "No, Natasha, I just documented your crimes." The Mitchell family watched in stunned horror as their golden boy and favored daughter were loaded into separate federal vehicles. Ryan's parents aged years in minutes, realizing that their children's actions would destroy everything they'd worked to build. "How long did you know?" Margaret asked me quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "About the affair, 7 months. About the theft, 4 months. About the pregnancy, 3 weeks. Why didn't you say something sooner?" "Because I needed evidence strong enough to ensure justice. Emotional accusations wouldn't have accomplished anything. Federal charges will." Robert Mitchell sat heavily in his chair, staring at the scattered legal documents. "We failed them somehow. We must have failed them as parents." "You didn't fail them," I said gently. "They made choices, adult choices with adult consequences." Local news crews arrived within 2 hours. The story spread rapidly through Seattle's social and business communities. Prominent real estate broker and socialite sister arrested for defrauding his wife in an incestuous affair conspiracy. My phone rang constantly. Reporters, friends, business associates, family members. I ignored all calls except one, Sarah Kim. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Relieved. For the first time in months, I can breathe again. They'll probably take plea deals to avoid trial. Ryan could get 12-15 years federal time. Natasha maybe 8-10, depending on how the pregnancy affects sentencing." Good. They made their choices. Ryan and Natasha both accepted plea agreements, rather than face trial and risk even longer sentences. Ryan received 13 years in federal prison. Natasha got 9 years with delayed sentencing until after her pregnancy. The civil lawsuit exceeded even Sarah's expectations. I recovered the full $428,000 in stolen funds, plus $1.2 million in punitive damages. The federal court ordered complete restitution and asset forfeiture. IRS penalties added another $200,000 in fines and back taxes. I sold our Magnolia home. Too many painful memories. Instead, I purchased a stunning waterfront penthouse in Belltown, with panoramic views of Elliott Bay. The change of scenery felt like a fresh start. The Mitchell family never contacted me again, which I understood completely. They were grieving the loss of the children they thought they knew, while processing the reality of crimes committed in their family name. Natasha gave birth in federal prison to a daughter. The child was immediately placed with Ryan's aunt and uncle in Portland, who had volunteered to provide a stable, loving home away from the scandal. Natasha sent me letters from prison, initially angry and blaming, eventually apologetic and pleading. She begged me to help with child custody arrangements and to find it in my heart to forgive. I read every letter, but never responded. "Do you feel any guilt about the child?" Sarah asked during one of our final meetings. "I feel sorry for an innocent baby born into a terrible situation. But I didn't create that situation. Ryan and Natasha did. That child is better off being raised by people who understand the difference between love and criminal behavior." 6 months after the arrests, Seattle Business Journal featured my agency in a cover story about entrepreneurs who had overcome personal crises. Victoria Chen turned devastating betrayal into business opportunity, the article stated. Her agency's revenue increased 250% following the high-profile case that showcased her crisis management skills and strategic thinking under pressure. The publicity, while initially uncomfortable, actually helped my business. Clients were impressed by my ability to handle extreme personal stress while maintaining professional excellence. Several major corporations reached out wanting to work with someone who had proven she could think strategically under the worst possible circumstances. 18 months after the Christmas disaster, I met Dr. Michael Torres at a charity gala for Seattle Children's Hospital. Michael was a pediatric surgeon, recently divorced himself, with a shared understanding of rebuilding after betrayal. "What's your red flag checklist now?" he asked during our 4th dinner date. "Financial transparency is absolutely non-negotiable. Anyone who can't discuss money openly, who hides accounts, or makes secretive transactions is automatically disqualified." "What about family dynamics?" "A partner's family must respect boundaries. No one gets unlimited access to relationship decisions or financial information." "Professional ethics. Criminal activity is an automatic deal breaker. I don't care about circumstances, explanations, or sob stories. Michael laughed. Sounds like you've developed a comprehensive screening process. Painful experience teaches valuable lessons. Any other deal breakers I should know about? Incest, I said with complete seriousness. Surprisingly important to specify these days. Michael's expression grew serious. I can't believe you had to go through that. It taught me that I'm stronger than I ever imagined. And that sometimes the worst betrayal becomes the greatest gift. It forces you to discover strength you never knew you possessed. Michael proposed during a weekend trip to Victoria, British Columbia, ironically the same country where Ryan and Natasha had planned their escape. But this time, I was crossing the border with someone who enhanced my life, rather than threatening to destroy it. I promise complete financial transparency, Michael said as he presented a simple, elegant ring. Joint accounts, shared decisions, open communication about everything. No secrets. I promise the same, I replied. Plus a prenup that protects both our careers and assets. Absolutely, I want a contract that ensures we're choosing each other freely, not out of dependency or desperation. Our wedding was an intimate ceremony at the Fairmont Olympic Hotel, the same venue where Ryan and I had celebrated 8 years earlier. But this time, everything felt different, genuine, honest, built on a foundation of mutual respect, rather than hidden deceptions. 50 guests who genuinely cared about our happiness attended. Michael's family welcomed me warmly, treated me like a treasured addition rather than a threat, and respected our boundaries completely. No drama, no manipulation, no financial crimes. Just two adults choosing partnership based on shared values. Genuine affection and hard-earned wisdom about what really matters in relationships. Any regrets about how you handled the Ryan situation? Michael asked during our honeymoon in New Zealand. None. That experience taught me exactly what I needed in a partnership. You wouldn't exist in my life without the lessons I learned from that disaster. So you're grateful for the betrayal. I'm grateful for the strength I discovered in myself. For the business success that followed. For the clarity about what matters in relationships. Ryan and Natasha were catalysts for growth I might never have achieved otherwise. Meanwhile, Ryan was serving his time in federal prison. 3 years into his sentence, he began writing me letters. Initially angry, blaming me for destroying his life and family. Eventually apologetic, claiming he'd lost his way and made terrible mistakes. I read every letter but never responded. There was nothing left to say. Do you feel any sympathy for him? Michael asked after I shared Ryan's latest letter. Sometimes I feel intellectual understanding that people make poor choices, but emotional sympathy for the consequences. No. He stole nearly $500,000 from our marriage to fund an affair with his sister, planned to flee the country without even filing for divorce, and never once considered how his actions would affect me. What about Natasha? She's serving her time. Her daughter is being raised by loving relatives who will give her the stability and moral guidance that Natasha never could. When Natasha's released, she'll be a middle-aged ex-convict with no skills, no resources, and a criminal record. She'll spend the rest of her life dealing with the consequences of her choices. 5 years after the Christmas revelation, Digital Spark Solutions had become the Pacific Northwest premier marketing agency for women-owned businesses. We were featured in Forbes' Harvard Business Review and Entrepreneur magazine. I was speaking at conferences nationwide about crisis management, strategic thinking, and building resilience in business and life. Your story resonates because you transformed devastating personal betrayal into professional opportunity. A Harvard Business School professor explained during a case study interview. Rather than becoming a victim, you became an example of strategic thinking under extreme pressure. I had significant advantages, I clarified. Financial literacy, business experience, professional networks, and resources for legal representation. Not every woman facing spousal fraud has these benefits, which is why you founded the mentorship program. Exactly. Strategic Recovery Northwest helps women navigate financial fraud, provides legal resources, business guidance, and emotional support during relationship betrayals. The program had helped over 300 women recover from various forms of partner deception. Some cases involved hidden assets, others secret debt, and several involved actual criminal activity similar to my situation. What's the most important lesson you teach? The interviewer asked. Document everything immediately. Trust your instincts completely. Build independent financial security. Never depend entirely on a partner for your economic survival. Relationship advice. Choose partners who enhance your existing life rather than complicating it with drama, debt, or dysfunction. Red flags don't transform into green flags with time or wishful thinking. I also established the Victoria Chen Foundation for Financial Literacy, providing free education to young women about money management investment strategies and protecting themselves from financial abuse. Why focus on financial education? A reporter asked during the foundation's launch event. Because financial independence is the foundation of all other freedoms. When you control your own money, you can't be controlled by someone else's manipulation, threats, or criminal behavior. 4 years after the Christmas disaster, I encountered Margaret Mitchell at a charity auction in downtown Seattle. She looked older, sadder, carrying the weight of family shame and public humiliation. Victoria, she approached hesitantly. Could we speak privately? Of course. We found a quiet corner away from the other guests. I want to apologize, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. For not seeing what was happening, for not protecting you from what they did, for raising children capable of such cruelty. You were their mother. You saw what you wanted to see. That's natural. I still think about that Christmas morning, about how calm you were, how prepared. Part of me admires what you did. And part of you hates me for destroying your children, I finished gently. She nodded, tears forming in her eyes. Yes, but they destroyed themselves, didn't they? You just documented it. They made choices, Margaret. Adult choices with adult consequences. I didn't force them to steal money or have an incestuous affair. I just refused to be their victim. How is the baby? She asked quietly. Your granddaughter is thriving with your sister-in-law's family in Portland. She's healthy, happy, and being raised by people who understand the difference between love and criminal behavior. She'll never have to know the circumstances of her conception unless she chooses to learn about it as an adult. Margaret wiped her eyes with a tissue. Robert and we've been in therapy, trying to understand how we failed so completely as parents. You didn't fail them. You gave them every advantage, every opportunity. They chose to throw it all away for a sick fantasy. Do you think they can ever be redeemed? I considered her question carefully. Redemption requires genuine remorse, acceptance of responsibility, and commitment to making amends. Ryan's letters show he's still primarily focused on his own suffering, rather than the harm he caused. Natasha has never even attempted to apologize. So no, I don't think redemption is likely. Margaret nodded sadly. I needed to hear that from you. Thank you for being honest. As she walked away, I felt a mixture of sadness and closure. The Mitchell family had been collateral damage in Ryan and Natasha's criminal conspiracy, but they were also beginning to heal and rebuild their lives around truth rather than denial. Christmas 2029. Michael and I hosted a dinner party at our waterfront home in Belltown. Our guests included close friends, business associates, my parents visiting from San Francisco, and Michael's family from Los Angeles. It was everything Christmas should be. Warm, genuine, filled with people who chose to be there because they cared about us. No manipulation, no hidden agendas, no criminal conspiracies lurking beneath the surface. Remember Christmas 2024? Michael asked during a quiet moment on our balcony, watching the ferries cross Elliott Bay under a canopy of stars. Best Christmas gift I ever received, I replied without hesitation. Learning the truth about Ryan and Natasha saved me from wasting years of my life in a fraudulent marriage, even though it was devastating at the time, especially because it was devastating. Comfortable lies are more dangerous than painful truths. That Christmas morning forced me to face reality and take action to protect myself. What would you tell 2024 Victoria if you could go back? Trust your instincts immediately. Document everything from the first red flag. Don't waste emotional energy trying to fix people who don't want to be fixed. And never ever ignore financial irregularities in a marriage. Any regrets about how you handled it? Only one. I regret not investigating sooner. I could have prevented some of the financial damage and emotional trauma if I'd acted on my suspicions earlier. And Ryan, Natasha, they're living with the consequences of their choices. Ryan has 6 more years in federal prison. Natasha was released last year, but she's struggling to rebuild her life as a middle-aged ex-convict with no marketable skills. Their daughter's thriving with her adoptive family. Justice was served. Do you feel vindicated? I feel peaceful. The truth came out. Justice was served. I rebuilt successfully. They're facing the reality of decisions they made. There's nothing left to resolve. Looking out over the Seattle skyline, watching the city lights reflect on the dark water, I reflected on the journey from that Christmas morning disaster to this moment of genuine contentment and hard-earned wisdom. If you're a woman navigating relationships and building financial independence, here are the life lessons from my experience. Trust your financial instincts immediately. When spending patterns change unexpectedly, investigate without delay. My business background helped me spot discrepancies quickly, but anyone can learn to monitor their finances effectively and identify suspicious activity. Document suspicious behavior comprehensively. Evidence is crucial in legal proceedings. Screenshots, bank records, surveillance footage, and professional documentation provide undeniable proof that emotional accusations cannot match. Maintain complete financial independence. Never allow a partner total control over assets or financial decisions. Keep separate accounts, understand all family finances, and maintain your own credit and investment portfolios. Recognize inappropriate family dynamics early. In-laws who undermine your marriage partners, who can't establish healthy boundaries with family members, or family relationships that seem unusually intense, are major red flags requiring immediate attention. Strategic thinking always beats emotional reactions. My calm, methodical approach yielded far better results than angry confrontation would have achieved. Professional investigation and legal preparation protected my interests in ways that emotional responses could never accomplish. Professional help is worth every penny. Private investigators, forensic accountants, experienced attorneys, and financial advisors protect your interests in ways you cannot protect yourself. Their expertise can save you hundreds of thousands of dollars and years of legal complications. Criminal activity has serious long-term consequences. Federal charges carry lengthy prison sentences and permanent criminal records. Document crimes properly to ensure prosecution and justice. Public accountability prevents escape. My Christmas confrontation prevented their planned flight to Canada and ensured the family witnessed the truth. Sometimes public exposure is necessary to prevent further victimization. Business relationships can survive personal drama. My agency thrived after the scandal because I maintained professional standards throughout the crisis. Clients respected my ability to handle extreme stress while delivering excellent work. Recovery and rebuilding are possible at any age. At 32, I successfully rebuilt my career, finances, and personal relationships. Age is never a barrier to starting over when you have the right strategy and support system. Choose partners who enhance your existing life. Michael represented healthy relationship dynamics, transparency, respect, shared values, family acceptance, and genuine partnership. He added value to my already successful life rather than creating complications. Legal boundaries protect everyone involved. Prenups, clear contracts, documented agreements, and professional legal advice prevent future disputes and ensure both partners understand their rights and responsibilities. Forgiveness is optional, not mandatory. I moved forward successfully without forgiving Ryan and Natasha. Healing doesn't require absolving others of their crimes or accepting their apologies. Sometimes the healthiest choice is permanent separation. Crisis can become opportunity with the right mindset. My betrayal experience became a business advantage, speaking platform, mentorship opportunity, and foundation for helping other women. The worst experiences can become the source of your greatest strengths. The most valuable lesson: when people show you who they are through their actions, believe them immediately and respond accordingly. Ryan and Natasha revealed their true character through systematic deception, financial crimes, and an incestuous affair. My strength came from accepting reality quickly and responding strategically, rather than emotionally. Sometimes the most devastating betrayal becomes the greatest gift, forcing you to discover inner strength you never knew you possessed, and creating opportunities for a better life than you originally planned. My story proves that women who refuse to accept betrayal silently, who fight strategically for justice, and who rebuild thoughtfully after devastation don't just survive catastrophic deception. They emerge stronger, wiser, and infinitely more empowered than before. The Christmas gift that was meant to destroy me ultimately set me free. And for that twisted irony, I will always be grateful. Remember, you deserve a partner who enhances your life, not one who complicates it with criminal activity, family dysfunction, and financial fraud. Trust your instincts, document everything, and never settle for less than complete honesty and respect. The end.